Guys, welcome to Talk with Nick, and thank you so much for supporting my journey. And I want to thank especially Ali, who is coming into my show because just researchers and entrepreneurs like this is giving me stories to share with you guys. And her story is an inspiring one because she came from Mexico, and it's been 8 years for you to be in Montreal, which is the city of entrepreneurs in Canada. Yeah, am I right? Yes, Montreal is
I
known
feel
as.
it's one of the biggest ecosystems. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
And she's been living in Canada for almost 8 years. Done her PhD from McGill, and she did her PhD in the green chemistry. And right now, she is a postdoc fellow and an entrepreneur with a fellowship of V1 fellowship.
Yeah, that's
So,
correct.
which is one of the most competitive fellowship that one can get to launch their business in Canada. So Ellie, thank you so much for coming into my show, Talk with Nick. It's really, really pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Nick. I'm so excited to share my journey with you.
Yeah, I'm also very excited to listen your journey more in detail now. So, oh yeah, I forgot to mention that she have a company which is making cosmetics and technology. It's kind of
Yeah.
mix of that thing, which is quite interesting and fascinating. So we're gonna see how she started studying chemistry and now she's mixing up cosmetics and technology because she likes to mix stuff, right?
Yeah, correct.
So that's really great. So if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're from Mexico, but you can share a little bit about your journey.
For sure. So, I grew up in Mexico, and by the time I got to high school, I was really thinking about where I wanted to go. And something that I was constantly told was think about what you like. So for me, as you mentioned, mixing things was something that I enjoyed even as a child. And cosmetics was another one of my big passions. And this really ignited the thought of, okay, I could do cosmetic formulation. That's a career path. And it would be something that would use both my talents and my passions at the same time. So with that in mind, I did IB, I did chemistry as my science. I went on and did my undergrad in chemistry in Mexico. And during my studies for my undergrad, I had the opportunity to come on an exchange to McGill University. So I came here for 3 semesters. I had the support of the ELAB scholarship, and that kind of like changed my mindset because it opened the door to a completely new sense of what science is and how one can advance it. And with that in mind, I applied to grad school. I came back for my PhD, and it's really been kind of like one step after the other that has led me here. But in a nutshell, I would say that those were my beginnings.
Well, I know the PhD journey is tough, and especially in the McGill, it's one of the toughest universities that I have heard that the PhD is very competitive, a lot of coursework. So, how was your experience of doing a PhD in McGill?
Yeah, I'll even start from my undergrad. When I came here on exchange, the first impression I had of McGill was really, okay, this is a whole different ballgame. Like, I was used to a certain rhythm, and I was used to getting like really good grades. And when I first arrived, I was shocked by the amount of work that you have to put into every one of your courses, and really the level of difficulty and of excellence that you're expected to have. So being set to those standards was really challenging at the beginning. And my first semester here, I didn't do well. I was really struggling to catch up with work because I wasn't used to having this structure where you have to like really like study your notes every day and like go to the library on the weekends and make sure that you're putting all that work into succeeding. But the second semester, having already learned that, was easier, and the third semester was easier in that sense, to the point where I was able to actively involve in research with one of the professors. When it came to the PhD, I already knew how much work it entailed to be good and to really take advantage of all that knowledge from your professors. So I had the structure. So that was, I think, good.
That's really great. You
Yeah.
already get the idea or like a teaser what's gonna happen in the PhD.
Exactly, and I already had like a basis with that, going into the lab and going from you need to do this when you're an undergrad to figure it out
What you're gonna do.
what you're gonna do in grad school. It was a big leap and it was hard, but I think I was surrounded with supportive people, and I made sure to be talking about what my challenges were, and that eventually led me to changing labs after my first year, which I think was quite difficult because I went in with the idea that, okay, I want to do this type of research, and once I started my journey, I thought, okay, this is not a good fit. I need to find something else, and it's a scary conversation to have with your supervisor. You don't know what's going to happen, but I think it was very worth it because then I started working with Professor CJ Lee. He, as we mentioned, focuses on sustainability, and I felt that's where I belong, and that really led me to becoming an entrepreneur. So I'm really grateful that I overcame my own fear and continued my journey in that PhD.
That's really, really great. Can you tell, like you mentioned about entrepreneurship and all these things, and we were talking before, you said it was the culture of the lab that gave you the spark of doing entrepreneurship. So was your PhD project related to the product that you are making in your company right now?
So it wasn't related, but the idea of having some science that can be applied commercially was really something that God, as you mentioned, kind of like drilled into me because of the lab culture of thinking that, okay, we're doing things in the lab, but how can we apply this for the bettering of society? And even though my research wasn't what I'm now taking commercially, realizing that I had to take that step further to take it out of the lab was what ignited that entrepreneurial mindset. So realizing that, okay, if I stop here, I can write a paper, I can publish it, but it won't reach a broader audience.
Yeah.
And that was something that I wanted to close the gap.
I understand.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So, did you learn some kind of skill sets that you are in your PhD that you are using right now in your company, AIM, to create products? Like, is there any kind of technology that you had learned in the university or in your PhD, and now you are applying that, or it's completely an entirely new project that you are doing right now?
I think that doing a PhD prepared me very well to become an entrepreneur. I feel maybe this is something you don't hear often, but when you're doing a PhD, you have to get real comfortable with failing. And it's
Very, very comfortable.
Yes.
Because you're gonna fail every day.
exactly, and it's difficult because you come from like excelling during all this, your academic journey and doing so great, and you think, okay, like this is the next step, and then it's one failed experiment after another failed experiment, another one, and you're like, okay, am I the problem? But at some point you need to realize that it's not you.
Yeah.
It's the nature of science, and as a scientist, you just separate yourself from what you're observing and saying, okay, I'll change this variable and I'll tweak this other parameter and I'll see what the results are, and I'll do it in a very methodological way so I can get results that I can analyze.
Exactly.
And for entrepreneurship, I think that you have this idea, it hasn't been done before, and you need to create that methodology towards succeeding. And of course, the first time you conceive the idea, it might not be the right way. And it doesn't mean like, oh, I failed, I'm no longer going to do it. It just means, okay, I need to change the parameters and try again. And having that determination developed throughout your PhD, which can be really tiring because at some point you're like, okay, like I want to move forward, but really it just builds this great character and self-confidence that you can overcome difficulties and that you can find solutions.
you know, you mentioned a lot of soft skills like self-confidence, character, leadership, all those things.
Yeah.
So, but usually when you are doing things like this, there are always bad days. Uh, but after some time, you don't think them as a bad days. But when you are entering into the game, when you are just a beginner, there is stress,
Yeah.
there is anxiety, there is different kind of feelings that we don't want to feel. So, what do you do in those kind of days? And how did you conquer it? Right now, you are saying now you are enjoying it. It's fun.
Yeah.
You know, but before,
No,
you
of
didn't
course.
say that, right? You
No.
wanted the result the first day.
Of course. I think self-compassion has been the greatest key to staying calm.
Okay.
And for me, it's just accepting that some days I don't feel great about how things are turning out.
Yeah.
And saying, okay, maybe today I just give myself a break. I'm gonna take it easy. Maybe I'll watch like some motivational speeches on YouTube or read a book that, you know, fulfills me and makes me feel better. And tomorrow I'll try again. But giving myself that space and allowing myself to say like, okay, today's not great. But it doesn't mean anything about me. It just means that today isn't great and it's gonna pass. That changed my mindset. And I think it's important that you have a supervisor that can allow for that, because sometimes you're put under so much pressure that everything should be perfect and that you should always perform at your 100%, which is not realistic.
Yeah.
So knowing that there will be down days, and in those down days maybe you can like read literature and just see how other people solve their problems, even if it's, you know, also science-based. It gives you that determination and motivation to say, okay, this is normal. What I am experiencing is a human like shared emotion. It's not like there's something wrong with me, and just letting it go and just
Very well said.
continuing.